Breaking news concerning the U.S. economy.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone. Gone.
Hey, I'm James Preston, and this is the first edition of the Global Crypto Podcast with Luno. It's an exciting time for us because this podcast marks the launch of a vision that we've had for 2 years, a vision to take our work to a global audience. Considering SA Crypto has become quite a strong brand, it made sense to simply expand the offering to become global crypto, with room for SA and the other amazing communities worldwide as well. So this episode is being released on the same day we officially launch our new domain, where all of our news and media is rooted from, globalcrypto.tv. So it's a special episode for us. But you're not here for that. You're here for none other than Anthony Pompliano. This is the Global Crypto Podcast with Luno, who are proud sponsors of this season. Let's hear from them quickly.
There's so much more to cryptocurrency than just trading. With Luno's industry-leading crypto wallet and exchange, not only can you buy and sell the main cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and XRP, you're also given world-class security and a wealth of knowledge. Luno offers free crypto education and some of the most detailed market analysis every week. Sign up today with the safe and easy way to buy, store, and learn about cryptocurrency. Go to www.luno.com or download the Luno app on iOS and Android. Luno is ranked in the global top 10 exchanges by CryptoCompare. T's and C's apply. Cryptocurrencies are volatile and unpredictable. Never risk more than you're willing to lose.
Right, so this week's episode is going to knock your socks off as Anthony talks to us about his eyes, how South Africans pronounce his name, if he sees himself as a celebrity, how to overcome these challenging economic times we face, and whether Bitcoin could become a world reserve currency. Next week, we have famed macroeconomist Raoul Pal, so make sure you're subscribed on email at globalcrypto.tv, on YouTube, and on your favorite podcasting app. For now, though, let's get into this week's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, especially the ladies who love glassy blue eyes, and guys too, I guess, I give you none other than Anthony, Mr. Pompliano. Anthony, welcome to the show. And welcome to some good old-fashioned South African media.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you on. Have you ever been on South African media before?
Only with Mr. Ron from CNBC, Crypto Trader. That's about it. But I don't know if that really counts.
All right. Well, I'd say so. It's been on South African TV. Pretty popular as Ran. But something we have to get out of the way first. Couple of things quickly. So firstly, the eyes, right? They're so striking. Everyone gets to see you on the likes of CNBC, all the other TV channels. Do you ever go on a date or have a conversation where people just can't look into your eyes because they're so darn striking?
My wife is probably the only person that gets very uncomfortable when I stare at her, but I don't think it's because of my eyes. I think it's probably because I'm complaining about something or making fun of her, but she's probably the only one.
Now, the nickname Pomp, I mean, obviously in America, I'm sure it's Pomp. It's pronounced Pomp. But I'm not sure if you know this, but in South Africa, we're going to say Pomp, right? And in Afrikaans, pomp is actually the word for it's like, hey girl, how about you and me go to the bedroom and we have a quick pomp kind of thing. Has anyone ever told you that before?
I did not know that, but hopefully my brothers and friends don't hear that, because I can only imagine the jokes that'll come.
Okay, we'll keep it off Twitter, okay? We'll keep it we'll keep it clean and away from the public eye then. All right, Anthony, just on a more serious note, just take us through your journey. I mean, how does a guy who served as a sergeant in Iraq, product manager at Facebook, and then headed up growth at Snapchat become a venture capitalist who loves Bitcoin. I mean, that's a crazy combination.
Yeah, I think it's one common thread, right? I just basically do the things that I want to do that I find enjoyable, and I'm not necessarily somebody who buys into kind of the constraints that society normally puts on in terms of, hey, you got to go to this type of school, you got to go get a master's degree, you got to go work here for 5 years and then do this. And there's a lot of people who try to play chess and they end up looking back at 45 or 50 years old and like, shit, where'd my life go? That kind of sucked, right? And yeah, maybe I got to the point I wanted in my career, but I didn't really enjoy it. And so I've just never been somebody who took that path. And each step in my career, I literally was said, what do I want to do right now? And I went and I did it, and find ourselves here now. And I think that ultimately it's all the same, right? Whether it is growing networks, it's building companies. It has a lot of the same principles and disciplines that kind of get wrapped up in that body of work. It just looks a little different kind of on the output side.
So let's talk about education. You went to Cardinal Gibbons High in Florida, then off to Bucknell University up in Pennsylvania. Were you a good student?
So I went to Cardinal Gibbons in North Carolina. There's 2 Cardinal Gibbons, and I went to the one in North Carolina, not Florida.
Okay.
But I was probably just a good enough student, so I didn't get my ass whooped by my parents. But other than that, I really didn't care too much for school, to be completely honest. It was one of those things where it wasn't hard. It was just kind of like, all right, so I have to sit here, listen to this teacher talk. I got to read the book, and if I do all that work, then I'm just going to regurgitate the information. But like, am I really learning, or am I just memorizing stuff for the test and then be done? And so literally I would do exactly what I needed to do to make sure that I got, just good enough grades, and then, basically went and spent my time doing other stuff.
How do you feel about college and higher education? It's become a contentious point in the US, especially as the higher end colleges, the Ivy League colleges, etc., they're all charging exorbitant rates. Do you think that tertiary education as we know it will cease to exist in our lifetime?
No, I don't think that it'll go away. I think it might become less popular, or it'll change in some forms. But you got to remember, college for most people has multiple components. So there's the education component. There's kind of the reputation piece, right? What is that name on the piece of paper when you walk out the door? Then there's the social component. And for most people, if you said what's the most important part, a lot of people actually would put, vote for the social component. And so that has nothing to do with the education, that requires you to go in person, that has things that are outside of the classroom, whether it's sports, clubs, parties, all that kind of stuff. I think that there's a lot of value that people get from that. On the education side, if you just want to go for the education and it's literally you don't care what the name on the piece of paper is, you don't care about the social aspect, like just go on YouTube. You can learn all this shit on YouTube. It's not really that hard. And frankly, you can go learn, Harvard and a bunch of these places have actually put their classes on YouTube. So you can actually get the same education as going there. What you find is that there's still a good portion of people who want that social experience or want that name on the diploma. And so I think they'll continue to have a business there. It just may not be as popular as it once was over time.
Now, you've clearly spent a lot of time close to the most innovative technologies that the world has to offer. I mean, working at Snapchat, Facebook, being a venture capitalist, now investing in crypto assets. Do you see yourself as an optimist? Because a lot of people close to emerging technology are either an optimist or a pessimist. Do you see yourself as an optimist, or are you more pessimistic about where the world is heading?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I'm an optimist, but I think it's rooted very much in information and data. And so if you go back in history, technology has continued to put us in a better position over time. So today, even with all of the world's problems, right, there's a lot of problems and a lot of things that need to be addressed or solved. We still live in the safest world we've ever lived in. We live in the most abundant world we've ever lived in. There's more opportunity than ever before. And generally, the quality of life for an average person in the world is much better than it was at any other point in history. And so a lot of that's been driven by technology or human progress and innovation. And so I tend to think that that's a trend that won't stop. And actually, if anything, is going to accelerate over time. And so naturally it just leads to you being optimistic when you look at that data.
So let's move into what you're famous for now, which is obviously crypto. Before I get into the actual nitty gritties of crypto assets, blockchain tech, etc., your fame is borderline unprecedented in the crypto world. You've just skyrocketed into the stratosphere of popularity in the crypto industry. Did you feel as popular when you were getting written about by the likes of TechCrunch when you were at Snapchat and Facebook? Or is this just a whole new level? Just describe the contrast between what you're experiencing now in the crypto industry and the more traditional tech industry.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that I'm famous. That's for sure. I tend to look at this very much as, I have a propensity to kind of say exactly what I think. I don't really sugarcoat things. There's people who like that, but there's also people who don't like that, right? And part of I think where you see a lot of the engagement online, and some of the media coverage is that there's just as much negative as there is positive, right? And so if you see a lot of that coverage, you got to have thick skin. And for me, like, I frankly don't care what anybody says, right? I grew up in a family with 4 other brothers, so 5 of us total, and we went at it every day. Like, literally, we just talk shit to each other all the time, nonstop. And so you develop thick skin over time. And, if there's some troll on the internet saying something, or a reporter writes something, that you disagree with, you kind of just shrug your shoulders and keep going. And so I think that from a kind of notoriety standpoint, the world tends to gravitate towards people who, one, say the truth, whether it's popular or not. 2, they're overly transparent. So they say when things are right. They say when they mess up or they make mistakes as well. And then the third thing is that there's this sense of, kind of in some weird way, courage to say some of this stuff, right? That it's unpopular to say things against, either people who are powerful or organizations that are powerful. But when you look back in history again, there's always somebody who needs to say it. And I think that, myself and there's a bunch of other people who in the Bitcoin community who have kind of done that. And, here we are today. We'll see how it plays out, but I like our chances.
So what are your thoughts on the industry as a whole? Let's look at the technology. How do you feel about blockchain tech outside of finance? Is there room for things like smart contracts, decentralized computing that so many of the enthusiasts are striving for? Or is it purely, in your mind, a financial game only?
Yeah, I don't think it's just financial by any means. At the end of the day, a blockchain is simply automated accounting. That's all it is, right? It does triple entry accounting in an automated fashion. And so I always joke with entrepreneurs. I say, look, does your business count? Okay. It does have transactions. Okay. Well, you probably could figure out a way to do it. Now, the question you got to ask yourself is, will you actually get a material improvement or gain any advantage by having an automated system or not? It's digital, decentralized, all the things. And to me, like, there's actually a very small number of businesses today where that actually makes sense. Over time, that'll grow. But it's kind of, similar to what we saw with the internet. It was very clear that eventually every company would have to have an internet presence early on. The big question was, what are the first ones? And so you couldn't have gone and built Amazon like it looks today early on. You had to build just a bookstore, right? And kind of slowly grow into it over decades. And I think that's kind of what's going to play out here is eventually every single business will have an automated accounting system to kind of process all of their transactions, whether that's monetary or otherwise. But today, that looks like a very small number of companies. They will be very kind of vertically focused. And then over time, you'll see them add more and more and more functionality. And I think that's part of the excitement or the opportunity is what can be built over the next couple of decades.
So you don't consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist?
No, look, we've invested in all kinds of stuff, right? I always kind of separate. To me, Bitcoin is a currency. It is the only currency that matters. And I look at the kind of framework of Bitcoin as Bitcoin has separated money from the state. And that's a very powerful idea. It's a very unpopular idea. But if that becomes important, Bitcoin will be much, much more valuable on a market cap basis than it is today. So that's kind of a money type application. But there's many other applications of automating accounting or transactions that we've invested in. And I think that that's the beauty here is we ultimately believe that every stock, bond, currency, and commodity will be digitized. And when you get digital assets, you now can have them transacted in an automated and real-time fashion through a blockchain. It's just going to take a long time to get there.
All right, just before we continue, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. We'll be back in exactly 1 minute. Don't go anywhere.
There's so much more to cryptocurrency than just trading. With Luno's industry-leading crypto wallet and exchange, not only can you buy and sell the main cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and XRP, you're also given world-class security and a wealth of knowledge. Luno offers free crypto education and some of the most detailed market analysis every week. Sign up today with the safe and easy way to buy, store, and learn about cryptocurrency. Go to www.luno.com or download the Luno app on iOS and Android. Luno is ranked in the global top 10 exchanges by CryptoCompare. T's and C's apply. Cryptocurrencies are volatile and unpredictable. Never risk more than you're willing to lose.
And we're back. Okay, Anthony,
tell us about the first time you heard about Bitcoin. Where were you? What went through your mind?
Yeah, I think it was like 2014 or 2015. So, I don't have one of these crazy like, hey, I heard about it in 2010 stories. I was working at Facebook. We had just hired David Marcus from PayPal, and he'd come in to run the Messenger team. I don't actually remember if it was him or somebody else. I heard it from the first time, but there was a number of people over a couple of weeks or months talking about Bitcoin and remittances and all the things that they could do in the Messenger platform. And I remember I turned to a gentleman who worked with me who was an engineer, and I said, hey, what the hell are they talking about? And I never will forget, he literally looked at me and said, it's stupid. And so I didn't Google it. I didn't do anything. And now whenever I talk with them, I always remind them, I say, yeah, remember, it's not stupid. Obviously we both have a different perspective today, but that was the first time. And then really when I got into it was in 2016, I believe, when I had a gentleman, JP Barrick, who I'd met when he was in high school. He was now in college, and he sat me down. He was like, you got to look at mining. And I didn't know what that was. And he kind of walked me through it. And so I went ahead and I bought a bunch of mining rigs and literally got them installed and kind of learned by doing. And very quickly it was like, whoa, this is something very different, something very powerful, and something that I want to spend more time learning about. And so I went ahead and did that.
What did you do with the mining rigs? I mean, I'm pretty sure they're not profitable now.
No. So I actually did a hosted mining. So I wasn't comfortable enough yet to have them delivered to me and like install them. I didn't have anywhere to go plug them in. And I probably bought too many, given my knowledge at the time. But we had them shipped to a location. They plugged them in. I remember we were mining, we were mining Ethereum or Ether to begin with. It was great. I mean, it's one of these things where I always tell people, like, there's nothing like putting some money at play, having some skin in the game, and all of a sudden you pay a lot more attention, right? And I was like glued to it. I was like, oh my God, did the price go up? Did it go down? Why did it do that? How does this work? What about the hash rate, right? The difficulty adjustments, like all of these different things. And very quickly, I think you realize you're learning in that process. So from there, then said, hey, look, rather than kind of have this test personally, we should go build out larger facilities. And myself and my partner, Jason Williams, went and did that.
And let's talk about the price action at the moment. Your approach to investing in these numerous digital assets, is it purely on a fundamental basis, or is it based on, technically I can see what's happening here is going to lead to some serious growth?
Yeah, there's two pieces to this. So one is kind of like, what's the macro view of it? And then actually on the micro level, like, what do we use as indicators to buy? I'll start with the micro side. I do not look at the US dollar price from a buying standpoint. I think the best thing that you can do is understand time in the market is much more important here than timing the market. And if you go back to 2017, Bitcoin went up 20x that year. If you took away the 9 largest gain days of that year, you could have possibly lost money or been flat, right? Like basically all of the gain was in those 9 days. And so if you're not in the market and those 9 days happen, you miss it, right? And so I think that what's really important here is people who understand that then say, okay, well, how do I put a position on, or how do I accumulate Bitcoin? And so I think of it in Bitcoin denominated terms. So how much Bitcoin do you own? And then basically dollar cost average in over a period of time. And so that's kind of on a micro level. On the macro level, last June, I think it was, I started to write a lot about, a lot of warning signs were going off, and you could see companies are over leveraged. CEOs were starting to step down. Then we got into the kind of Q3, and you started to see a lot of the repo market gyrations. You started to see even more issues and kind of, yield curves inverting and all these different things. I said, the only two tools the central banks have is they're going to cut rates, they're going to print money. I didn't think that they were going to get to zero. I thought they'd go low, but not to zero. And I definitely didn't think that they were going to print, $3+ trillion in a matter of weeks. So kind of, I thought they'd cut rates and print money, but not nearly at the aggressiveness and extreme level that they have. But I said, as they cut those rates and print money, it's going to be very simultaneous around the same time as the Bitcoin halving. And so as they cut rates, print money, people will run into sound money principled assets like gold and Bitcoin. And if you get that halving or that supply shock around the same time, I think it'll end up serving as rocket fuel for Bitcoin. And obviously I'm on the record kind of publicly as stating that I think Bitcoin's going to go to at least $100,000 by the end of 2021. And so kind of, 18 to 20 months from now. And a lot of that's driven by the supply shock in terms of the Bitcoin halving coming up. But also I think there will be a pretty significant demand shock as well, where you'll see a bunch of people start looking to protect their wealth. And Bitcoin will be one of many solutions for them to do that.
So that leads quite nicely into the next question. The talk about the dollar losing its reserve currency status in the coming decades. A couple of economists have started to explore this. I mean, even Ray Dalio's stuff is now really delving deep into the shift in economic powers. Do you think that Bitcoin will become a serious reserve currency in our lifetimes? And if so, what kind of time frame? I know it's a tough question, but what kind of time frame do you think this could happen in?
Yeah, so in our lifetimes, I'm 31 years old, so let's call it 50 years, give or take. I think it's possible. If you go back, 1971 is almost 50 years ago when we went off the gold standard. So it's definitely a lot can happen in that time period. What I do think is going to happen in the short to medium term is the dollar will continue to strengthen, and you'll start to see a lot of these developing market currencies, either they'll just devalue incredibly against the dollar, or you'll see outright failures, right? I think Lebanon is a great example of what's going on there. You start getting capital controls, things like that. The Australian dollar went down like 40-50% earlier this year against the dollar. And so really you're going to get almost like a consolidation where there will only be 5 to 8 fiat currencies that matter in the world. Right now, maybe there's 15 of them, but you'll get some consolidation, and then you'll get Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will continue to kind of do its thing and gain adoption and strengthen, get more hash rate and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, there's a showdown, right? But that showdown, I don't think is confrontational. I actually think that showdown plays out over many, many years because what will end up happening is take, Russia and China, for example. Russia and China want to get off the US dollar badly, but there's really no other option, right? What are they going to do? And so with Bitcoin, what they can basically do is they can both agree to do bilateral trade denominated in a currency that they know no one is manipulating, right? There's full transparency into it. I don't think we're anywhere near seeing that happen, especially with world superpowers. We have seen some countries do that in the past. I think Argentina did a transaction with like Turkey for a couple $1,000s, and maybe with like Peru or Chile or something. But I do think that at some point here, over the next, call it 15 years, that will become a saving grace for a number of countries as they look to kind of get off the dollar system and really mitigate that risk that they have. And then as you start to seep up into the larger superpowers, you could see a really interesting and frankly scary world where if you had 2 or 3 superpowers come together and say we're all going to move off simultaneously to whether it's Bitcoin or something else, right? That would be kind of a shakeup of the world order that definitely would be felt across industries and across geographies.
What kind of material do you read and would you recommend to people that would be interested in those kind of shifts in economic powers?
Yeah, probably the number one person is Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. His stuff is fantastic. He's got a daily email that he sends out that I think is really good. And then frankly, Twitter, right? I mean, I'm amazed at the ability to just sit on Twitter and consume content. And you got to be careful about what content you're consuming. Kind of this idea that your information diet may be even more important than your diet in terms of food. But I do think that Twitter has way more information than people realize. And the fact that there are some of the brightest minds in finance and economics and business and technology sitting there basically just talking to each other, and you get to participate and also listen. It's an incredible tool that I think people should take better advantage of.
As a media outlet with a pretty large audience in an emerging market like South Africa, we've just spoken about a number of emerging markets. You mentioned Argentina, Chile. What advice can you give entrepreneurs and business people in a market like ours? And there could be many others, such as Latin America, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, etc. Many business people here and in emerging markets, they can't just pack up shop and seek the American dream, if that even exists anymore. So what should they do as their markets seem to be slowly imploding around them?
Yeah, I think there's 2 key pieces, right? The first is build a business for the future, not a business for the past. And what I mean by that is many people who have a business that is rooted in brick and mortar, retail, or is based on the local economy, that is going to be a tough slog moving forward, regardless of what geography you're in. But if you can somehow create a digital revenue stream or access to digital revenue, I think that'll serve you well. And really, it's just because when you have that internet connection, you can tap into a much larger addressable market. There's literally just more opportunity. And so that is kind of one piece of advice. And then the second is, think long and hard about what the likely scenarios are that it could play out in your local economy, and make sure you're prepared, right? I think a lot of people kind of talk about this stuff, but they actually never take action. And then all of a sudden it's too late, right? It's one of these things like, I knew I should have done X, or I knew I should have done Y. And that is everything from protecting your personal wealth, protecting the business's balance sheet, to also getting out of a business, right? Selling a business, doing all of these things. So I tend to, just favor people who have a propensity for action, because I think that action is what ultimately not only one drives results, but 2 can help people sidestep problems that could come down the pipe in the future. You just got to spend the time to think about it, and then actually kind of have the courage to act.
So Anthony, we're going to wrap things up, but just before we do, we saw that you interviewed Raoul Pal recently, and we're privileged enough to have him as guest number 2 on this series of the podcast. Actually, tomorrow we're recording with Raoul. So when you had Raoul on the show, were there any questions that you didn't get to ask him? And if so, what question would you like to ask him? We're going to relay it to him tomorrow from you.
Tell Raoul to tell the story about the worst trade he's ever had and how much money he lost. I don't know what the answer is, but I figure he's got a good story. He does wild shit, so I'm sure he's got a good story in there somewhere.
Well, that is a great question. Okay, well, we're going to leave it right there. Anthony Pompliano, we really appreciate you giving us this time, man. This has been hugely valuable. We wish you all the best as you continue your career as one of the leading voices in emerging technology. And enjoy the halving, man. Take care.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Cheers, man. Bye.
And that's it for this week's episode. Special thanks to Luno once again for making this podcast possible. If you don't have an account with them, get one. www.luno.com, the safe and secure crypto wallet with everything else to go with it. Next week, we hear from this man.
And I was down $1.5 million in a day, and that was one of the first trades I'd done in the fund.
That's Raoul Powell, macroeconomist and CEO of Real Vision, chatting to us from the Cayman Islands. Make sure that you are subscribed to us on YouTube, Twitter, and on your favorite podcasting app. We have incredible content coming your way. You don't want to miss anything. Until the next episode, to the moon, baby.
Breaking news concerning the U.S. economy.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone.